You probably know that blockchains are divided into layer 1 and layer 2, but what is the difference between them? Today we'll look at the differences between them and why layer 2 is needed. And at the end we'll see if it's possible that layer 2 is just a temporary solution that will become useless in the future. First of all, let's understand what layer 1 and layer 2 are. Layer 1 is the foundation of any blockchain. It is the layer where all transactions take place. Smart contracts are created, and the security of the network is maintained. All transactions are performed directly on the network itself, without any third-party solutions. Ethereum, Solana, BNB chain are examples of layer 1 blockchains. But layer 1 has one problem. When the network becomes popular, the load on the network grows. The more users, the slower the transactions become, and the higher the fees. Ethereum is a classic example. At times of overload, commissions can reach tens and sometimes hundreds of dollars per transaction. And this is where layer 2 appears. It's an add-on that helps offload the main blockchain and make transactions faster and cheaper. Layer 2 works as an additional layer that processes transactions separately and then writes them to layer 1. This keeps the main network from being overloaded and reduces fees. In simple words, if layer 1 is the main road on which all traffic moves, then layer 2 is an overpass that allows to relieve the traffic flow and speed up the traffic. We figured out that layer 1 is the foundation of the blockchain, and layer 2 is an add-on that helps solve scalability problems. But what's the real difference between them? The main difference is how transactions are processed. In layer 1, the blockchain itself takes all the workload. Every transaction is written to the network, and miners or validators verify it. This gives high security and decentralization, but slows down the system. The more people use the blockchain, the slower and more expensive the transactions become. Layer 2 works differently. Instead of writing each transaction to layer 1 at once, layer 2 first processes them separately and then sends the result to the main blockchain. This reduces the load and saves on fees. Now it's clear why layer 2 is needed, but does it work the same on all blockchains? To answer this question, let's look at how Ethereum, Solana, and BNB chain are organized and why their approaches to scalability are so different. Ethereum is the first blockchain that made smart contracts possible and gave rise to DeFi, NFT, and decentralized applications. But along with that, Ethereum faced a serious problem: slow speed and huge fees. The average time to confirm a transaction is 10-15 seconds. But if the network is overloaded, it can take longer and fees skyrocket to tens of dollars. At such times, Ethereum becomes unusable for ordinary users. And that's why layer 2 is not just an additional solution for it, but a necessity. Rollups, such as Arbitrum and Optimism, intercept some transactions and make them cheaper. But this brings up the question: if Ethereum can't work properly without layer 2, does it mean that it is already inefficient by itself? In comparison with this, Solana looks completely different. Its architecture was originally designed to be fast and cheap. Instead of using layer 2, Solana solves the scalability problem right at the layer 1 level. The network processes up to 65,000 transactions per second, and the fees are so low that they are almost unnoticeable. That's why it's Solana and not layer 2 Ethereum that Visa is testing for crypto payments. Imagine being able to send any amount of money in seconds and without huge fees. This is what makes Solana one of the most convenient blockchains for real payments. And here's another interesting point. Layer 2 for Solana is practically non-existent. Yes, there are projects like Solaxi, but they are more like side chains than full-fledged layer 2. Solana just doesn't need it because it's already scalable. But how reliable is that in the long run? And finally, BNB chain. It stands somewhere in the middle between Ethereum and Solana. On the one hand, it is faster and cheaper than Ethereum. On the other hand, it's not as decentralized. The reason is simple. The network is created by Binance, and most of the validators are linked to the company's ecosystem. This makes BNB chain convenient for trading, DeFi, and staking, but reduces decentralization. Additionally, Binance is already testing layer 2 solutions like CKBNB, but they don't work the same way as classic layer 2 in Ethereum. It's more like an additional layer of scalability within the network, rather than a separate transaction processing layer. So, while Ethereum is forced to use layer 2 to stay competitive, Solana is doing without it for now, and BNB chain is going its own way by combining different technologies. Now we see that Ethereum is critically dependent on layer 2, while Solana and BNB chain are doing without it. But why is it so? Why can't one blockchain just work without add-ons, while others are inherently scalable? It's all about the way networks work. Ethereum was created as the most decentralized blockchain possible, where each node verifies all transactions. This makes it secure, but slow. The more users there are, the harder it is to process their transactions, which means the network gets overloaded and fees go up. Layer 2 solves this problem by taking over the transaction processing and writing only the final data to Ethereum. This reduces the load and speeds up the network. But the problem is that Layer 2 is not part of Ethereum itself, but a separate solution. This means that users have to use additional tools, bridges, and sometimes even change their usual ways of working with the blockchain. Solana has chosen a completely different path. Instead of building Layer 2, it initially made Layer 1 fast. The unique proof of history algorithm allows the nodes of the network to run many times faster than Ethereum, which means that transactions are processed instantly and at almost without any cost. That's why Solana doesn't need Layer 2. Its architecture already solves the problems that Ethereum is trying to fix with add-ons. BNB chain is in the middle. It's a centralized Layer 1 that scales easier than Ethereum but is less decentralized. Binance is already testing Layer 2 solutions, but unlike Ethereum, they don't need this for survival, but rather for user convenience. It turns out that Layer 2 is not a universal solution. Ethereum needs it because without it, the network simply can't handle the load. But in Solana and Bnb, Chain Layer 2 is either not needed at all or performs additional functions. We have already understood how Layer 1 and Layer 2 work, why Ethereum can't do without the Layer 2, and why Solana and Bnb chain can manage to work without it. But now the main question is, how promising is all this? Right now, Layer 2 seems indispensable for Ethereum. Without it, the network simply can't handle the load, and users are forced to find cheaper and faster ways of working. Rollups like Arbitrum and Optimism are being actively developed, and companies like Visa are already testing them in real payments. But what if, in a few years, Layer 2 is simply no longer needed? After all, technology doesn't stand still. Ethereum has long been working on a solution to this problem at the level of the blockchain itself. Ethereum 2.0, with its move to proof of stake and the introduction of sharding, could significantly increase network capacity, which means that the need for Layer 2 may decrease. Solana and BNB chain are already showing that it is possible to build scalable blockchains without additional layers. Yes, they have their compromises, but the very fact that they work without Layer 2 makes you wonder, are second layers really the future, or are they just a temporary measure until Layer 1 becomes powerful enough? If Ethereum is able to increase the speed of its base layer and other blockchains continue to improve their architecture, Layer 2 may lose its relevance. We're already seeing Visa testing Solana for fast payments, and it's a Layer 1 blockchain, not an add-on. Layer 2 is a great technology, but it may just be plugging holes rather than offering a perfect solution. And if a blockchain comes along in the future that is initially as fast and cheap as Layer 2, but at the Layer 1 level, the whole concept may just disappear. And here's another question. If Layer 1 is getting more and more powerful, how can we capitalize on it? One of the easiest ways is through staking. Blockchains like Solana allow you to not just store coins, but also earn passive income by maintaining the network. Our company Robobo is a validator of the Solana network. And if you have SOLs, you can delegate them and earn 11% annual interest. In doing so, your coins stay with you and you simply send them to work, helping the network become more stable. The link to the Robobo Validator will be in the description. Now you have an understanding of why Layer 2 is needed at all, what blockchains do without it, and whether it might disappear in the future. Write in the comments what you think about it. Will Layer 2 stay forever, or is it just a temporary technology? If the video is useful, please like it and subscribe so you don't miss more breakdowns from the world of blockchain.